What's up, everyone? It's your boy Infrar-Ed. Welcome to the Scout Reports. Today I bring you an anime review of Bungo Stray Dogs Episode 2. First and foremost, going into this episode, and going into this series in general, for this to be a seinen, or for it to be labeled as a seinen, and that's what it was labeled as across many sources, this series has a lot of comedy into it. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I love comedy, and something that I commended this series for in the first episode was its ability to shift from a dark tone to a comedic tone so seamlessly. But this episode in particular was pretty much all comedy, and I can see how people could be taken aback by it. I can see how people would probably want to drop it because they felt they were deceived. But me personally, I'm really enjoying the episode. It reminds me of the good times in Soul Eater and Full Metal Alchemist, even in Blood Blockade Battlefront, in a sense that even though it has this straight hard-on serious approach to it and all the trailers and everything, there's a nice amount of comedy into it that kind of lightens and darkens the tone as each goes. But again, this episode was really light-hearted, and it was also fast-paced too, and that's how you know you're having fun with a series, when it just seems like you sat down and you watched it and it was over 5 minutes ago. Again, I'm really personally enjoying this episode. Now, I remember I was going to drop Kill la Kill until they got to episode 3, and then we got the fight between Satsuki and Ryoko, and then I was just on since, and it became one of my all-time favorite series of all time. So it's only a second episode. It's still room for this series to grow, and this episode took a lot of time to do a little bit more world building, since they didn't really get a chance to in the first episode, it seems. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get to the episode. It starts off with our main character, Atsushi. He's sleeping. He's waking up by a phone call from Daizai, frantically asking him to come to a location to assist him because only he can help. He gets to Daizai and he sees Daizai has trapped himself in a damn barrel as another mechanism for him to try to kill himself. And the only reason why Atsushi was able to assist him, or the only person who was able to assist him, is because everybody else in the armed agency is kind of tired of Daizai's crap right now with him trying to kill himself. And apparently he runs these type of games on people all the time, where he's trying to kill himself and he gets himself stuck or something, and then they get there and they have to get him out of it. So with that being said, we get a little bit of talking between the two, and we find out that Atsushi is aware that he's the tiger now. However, he can't turn to the tiger at will, and I'm pretty sure that's something he's going to learn later on in the series. Again, for a series that is labeled as seinen, and you have pretty much a central character whose main focus is to kill himself, I can still see the potential of this series getting really dark later. Or anybody that can't die and they're trying to kill themselves, we know from experience that it has to be a lot more to it than that. So I'm really interested for them to get to the ground, start running, and we can find out a little bit more about Daizai and why he has this affinity of wanting to die. So with that being said, the episode continues as Daizai is walking with Atsushi, and he's saying that they have to go to the agency in order to stop a bomber, because a bomber is holding the agency hostage and he's demanding to see the president, and he's not negotiating any other way until he sees him. On the way there, we run into Kunakina, and I love the dynamic between Daizai and Kunakina in this series, because you have the straight-laced seriousness of Kunakina, who's always writing things down and documenting. He also has in his booklet, he has documentation of every time someone's complained about Daizai, and a point that kind of points it out, like, why wouldn't you trust me? Like, well, here's a list of all the things you've done since you worked here almost. And after he starts listing off a couple of things, Daizai kind of brushes it off like, somebody must have been an imposter. I couldn't have possibly did that. The two go back and forth and they argue a little bit. And again, I really do like the dynamic between them. It's kind of like silly cop and serious cop coming together to get the job done. But we both know, as we've seen from the first episode, that if Daizai needs to go in, he can definitely go in, especially with that ability called I don't remember what it was called exactly, but he has the ability to pretty much erase someone's supernatural ability with a touch of his finger. So, and he can throw those hands. So we'll be able to see that later. I can't wait until this series picks up and we get into more detail about these things. So we fast forward a little bit and we finally get to the office with the hostage situation. And Daizai and Kunikina do a rock, paper, scissors game, and Kunikina loses. So while that's going on, they get to the bomber, who again is pretty much wants the president. He's demanding the president. He has a girl hostage. He has a bomb detonator in his hand and a bomb near him. He's threatening to blow up the office if his demands aren't met. While this is going on, Daizai is talking to Atsushi, saying that you would have a better chance going out there to do something about this because he doesn't know you. You know, you're not an agent, so someone coming in trying to talk him off a ledge per se will have a better chance than one of us. So Atsushi, he goes in and he starts telling this story about how he was kicked out of his orphanage and the whole tiger thing. But however, it's not working, and the bomber isn't buying it because he's so scared and nervous that he's stumbling over his words. He's making silly faces, but he pretty much tries to drive home that all these terrible things happen to me, but you don't see me in the office trying to hold it hostage or blow anybody up. They also try to come up with a plan that if all else fails, if they can happen to shield the bomb with enough force, it may at least be able to minimize the damage that they have. So while he's trying to negotiate and talk to his bomber, Kunikina reveals his ability in this episode, and that ability is called Dopa Poet. And he has something that says wire gun. He pulls out a page from his notebook, and it generated a wire gun that he shot, and he was able to knock the detonator out of the bomber's hand and then apprehended him from there. And at this point, Daizai comes up and says, well, you lost the rock, paper, scissors game. That's why you had to go out there instead of me. And, you know, the two argue and they banter a little bit, even to the point where Daizai knows how obsessed Kunikina is with writing things down. So he says, I have a hint for you. You know, if you're too neurotic, it causes you to have wrinkles. Go ahead and write that down. So Kunikina is literally writing this down, and while he's doing these, Daizai says, you know what, I was just messing with you. And he gets so upset that he snaps his pen. But while this is going on, the bomber gets free and he grabs the bomb once again. This time he sets off the detonator as the clock goes down. Atsushi makes a last minute decision as he remembers that if the bomb can be detonated, if the bomb's detonated and he has enough force over it, it could at least minimize the blast. So he pulls a Captain America, he puts the bomb over himself and he holds it down, you know, saying basically he's going to sacrifice himself for everybody else. As we found out that the bomb was a dud, and the girl that was held hostage as well as the bomber are actually members of the armed agency. And the president comes out, and the president is like a tall, slender man with a Japanese samurai type robe and white hair. He looks really cool, and he welcomes Atsushi into the armed agency, as this whole thing was just a test to pretty much see how he would react in this type of situation. And he's approved by the president and Daizai, and that closes off our episode. Again, it was a phenomenal episode. I mean, I like the comedy. I would be lying if I didn't say I do want to see the darkness that this series has, and we get a glimpse of that as after the end credits, we get to see a man in the shadows who is told by a female assistant that the were-tiger has been found. And as he's walking away, we see this big creepy shadow type monster bite into the screen as the episode ends. So it looks like we got our glimpse of a potentially the villain of this series. Maybe not of the entire series, but he's definitely a villain. Come on, he has a dark look, he has a shadow beast for ability, so that automatically equals villain. And the one thing that I also want to note is Grand Rodeo does the opening theme for this, and they've done pretty much all of Kuroko no Basketball's openings. They also did the opening for Codebreaker as well, and I love all of their work. I mean, I liked it last week, but once I heard it again and things got flowing and you started to see the visuals, it's definitely up there. It's a really good opening for this series, and it sets the tone as well, because that darkness that we're probably waiting on is shown in that opening. So yeah, that was it in a nutshell. Holler at me in the comments and let me know what you think about the episode. Is it everything that you think is going to be so far? Are you going to stick with it? Me personally, again, I like the shift between light and dark, and I know that it's probably going to get darker later because it has that Seinen tag to it. So yeah, definitely go ahead and let me know what you think. If you liked the video or anything I had to say, go ahead and drop it a like, and if you want to hear more, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, as I am constantly uploading content. At this point, I'm pretty much uploading something every day for you guys, so it's always something for you to kick back here and see. So that is it for the Scout Report. It's your boy Infrar-Ed signing out. See you soon.